Good morning, Vikings fans. This is Morning Joe's, brought to you by Grey Duck Vodka. Grey Duck Vodka, get the duck out. I'm Joe Johnson. I am the owner of PurplePTSD.com, VikingsTerritory.com, and PurpleTerritoryRadio.com. Back with my life partner, my mentor, the apparent new CEO of a lozenge company.
Yeah.
Mr. Joe Oberle.
Yeah. And I'm back. Yeah, so I just want to thank Kirby O'Connor for, is that the name? Yes.
Yeah.
First filling in for me. And if he tries to change his name to Joe, we're going to have problems. Because,
I missed you, man. I'm not going to lie.
Thanks.
I love Kirby and all the stuff he's doing, obviously. But, yeah, it's good to have you back. It's a true story. As I mentioned in the intro, I have these sites. I don't do all the work, or hardly actually any of the work, by myself. And but regardless, there are a lot of spinning plates. So I have like 6 different Twitter accounts that I log into to promote different things. And the newest one is actually my account because I always just was posting my thoughts and live stuff on like the Purple PTSD account. And so it's about 2-3 weeks old. I hadn't checked it for a couple days, or actually a little bit longer than that. And I noticed, was it yesterday or the day before, that basically, Joe, you had been on your vacation, which I want to ask you a little bit about your vacation too, but that you had been doing your own reaction to all the crazy, I mean, there was just so much that happened since we last did a show together, and the conclusion I immediately drew was that you have officially come down to my level. It's taken, 3 years?
I was, I guess I was feeling a little Joe Johnson-ish. I got a little Wi-Fi out on the cruise I was on, and I started looking at what was going on, and I was really kind of frustrated with what happened, with the offensive line when we lost Nick Easton. That for me, that sent up signal flares, because that was the one we were all counting on. That was the one that you almost, you penciled it in. The guy missed last year because of injury, and you figured he wanted to get back on the field, and you put him alongside Pat Elflein, and then, you got the up-and-coming Brian O'Neill, and hopefully Riley Reef is back and healthy, and then you just got to fill one spot. Well, suddenly, they lose 3 potential starting guards in Remmers, who they let go, Compton, who went elsewhere, and now Easton. I said, holy buckets, they got troubles here. This is worse than we started out. It was supposed to get better. So that was to me
that is
signal flare.
Yeah, it is a very salient point because so a good way to explain this is that we're partnered with Bleacher Report now, so a lot of the time, pretty much every day, Bleacher Report goes to both Purple PTSD and Vikings Territory, and if they like an article or if it's not redundant, they will post it, and then when people click to read it, we get the clicks. It's been an amazing partnership. It's, we're getting, thousands and thousands of new clicks a day, 95% of which are people who had never been to the site before, and then 83% of them come back within 5 days on their own. So it's like a snowballing thing, and ironically, when we talked on the phone yesterday, just to catch up on some stuff, I went into this long story about one of our writers, and there's always a point where they get to a point in their writing career where they start getting a lot of responses and how to react to comments when people don't necessarily read the whole article or they only read the headline, so on and so forth. And so I looked at your article because it's the number one article right now on Bleacher Report, and there was 8 comments as of this morning. 7 of them were basically, agreeing with the article. And the last one said, wow, the hate is real, which I don't think is really a point. But it said, this guy talks about Cheryl's leaving. That's not that big of a deal. And he said, losing Nick Easton is a huge, the biggest loss of the free agency period. And Nick Easton wasn't that good, and you're putting too much value in Nick Easton. And I think that, going into, and not to put words in your mouth, but the way you just framed it is where your mindset was, where mine was, where we all assumed that, or even presumed, really that there was that one spot and that we had a bare minimum and that we'd build from that. And it seemed like a couple things. One, that they started free agency essentially by moving backwards and creating more need on the line. And 2, that they didn't have a lot of money or capital to fill those positions. And so I was panicking the show before last, really, in looking at, okay, they did free up some money with Sendejo and Remmers, but they spent that money on bringing Shamar Stephan back, which, they could have maybe used that. They weren't going to get a blue chip free agent guard. They didn't have the money. But they could have covered, the veteran minimum or a little bit more of somebody else. Now, they figured it out and got Josh Klein in, which kind of made me calm down a little bit. But you're right. I mean, it seemed like they and they've done this before, and Alex Boone isn't the best example, but it seems like whenever they get some depth or something, they end up releasing a player. And so it's just... Even right now, it's kind of a precarious situation.
Well, it seems like that. That's what happens, and I think that's for a reason. We've all sit back how many times and are in awe of Rob Basinski, the capologist who fits it all under the cap for this team over and over again. We've always been amazed at how he's done it, and the fact that he's kept Barr and all the other defenders that or Diggs, Barr, and all these people that were up in the last couple of years, and he signed mostly all of them. And we always wonder how. Well, this is how. You've got to fit this puzzle together. You got to make room with by jettisoning other players or having them restructure. And I thought that would happen. And I was surprised that the priority wasn't the offensive line. It became Barr, and that's fine. I wanted Barr. I wanted him back. I know Zimmer did. Barr wants to be here. I love that aspect of it. The fact that you got a player who didn't just go chase the dollars. He said, I like what I got going on here, and that's a little surprising from Barr, since he might play better in a 3-4 defense. So
yeah,
it all surprised me. But that's where the cap space got eaten up. That's where the restructure of Everson Griffin came into play. And I'm wondering why there aren't more restructures going on. Maybe talking to Kyle Rudolph, maybe talking. The biggest
there
one of all for me is is Kirk Cousins. And I don't know if they can restructure his. It's all guaranteed money. You think they can do anything, but I'm surprised that that's not a thing that's broached. Because ultimately they want to protect him and make him better, and maybe restructure and take away some of the guaranteed money and turn it into incentives that he can probably get if he's got a line in front of him. I don't know.
Yeah, and we talked about that too. Maybe turning the remaining 2 years into another year or a year after that. It's kind of hard, just I think, being the way that restructures usually work. They add more guaranteed money, but it's less of a cap hit. There's a few things there that we should unpack, I guess. First being the Barr situation. That was a huge surprise. And, it was weird because I have not always been the biggest Barr guy. And in talking in typical Morning Joe's fashion, we recorded, and by the time before that I even posted the show, it was literally 2-3 minutes after the bar news broke, and it kind of voided everything that I talked about. And I said, again, I'm not the biggest bar guy, but he does do a lot. He is kind of the leader, the Mike linebacker. And
he does. I mean, and Zimmer loves him. I mean, we've heard this time and time again, and at some point we have to believe him that he does more than everybody with an analytics tool knows how to quantify. I think there's a reason why they brought him back for these high dollars, and Zimmer's talked about him and praised him, and vice versa. I guess I defer to that, but I interrupted you to go ahead.
No, it's the thing with Barr to me is there's been games where he's been exploited, and that the Rams game I point to a lot, but he was covering an elite slot receiver in Cooper Kupp. So I understand that. It's just it seems, and Zimmer has called him out on this. Sometimes it seems like he isn't fully engaged. It may be from injury or something, but it seems like he has games where you don't really see him a whole lot, and so on and so forth. But going back to what I said before, I also didn't like the idea of the Vikings having then people were saying, well, they're going to get rid of Everson Griffin as well. So then I'm like, great. So now we're going to need to probably use the first round pick on a linebacker, and then we have to replace our edge, our defensive end,
and our Sheldon Richardson.
Yeah. So it was. I was just like, I don't want to pile up all these needs. I want them to have in the draft a singular focus, or one or two, the running back 2, but you don't need to spend a huge pick on that. So it was. It was kind of a mess, and obviously you didn't have time, or you weren't in town to go over to TCO or to be at like any of those press conferences. I did see that the Jets GM he didn't. They said that he slammed Barr. All he said was
no, he didn't.
You're
right.
We want guys that do want to be here,
right?
And so it's unfortunate when someone backs out, but if he didn't want to be here, he didn't want to be here. I didn't necessarily interpret that as a slight. He was just kind of explaining their point of view on it, which I think is fair.
Yeah.
But what is your take on why he did that? Do you think it's a camaraderie thing, or do you think maybe he thought he didn't want to deal with the New York media as much?
You probably think all of it's involved. He's got his buddy who's been his college roommate alongside him for his entire career, except for his rookie year, in Kendricks. I think they're good friends. They work well together. They know each other. I'm sure anybody that goes to that market, is somewhat intimidated, and they better know what's headed their way if they do so. There may be a different philosophy in their defense, and it's a comfort zone back there. What's Barr? Was he 5 years he's been here?
I think 6.
6 maybe. You build up a life, you build up friendships, you build up a way of working. Zimmer's been his coach for his entire career. It was his first draft choice. There's a connection there. It's hard to say. Anthony Barr is a kind of a quiet, unassuming guy. In the locker room, he's very intelligent. He's got great things to say. He doesn't like to do it that much. He seems just a little bit reticent when the microphones are all in his face. He does his share, and he's more than willing to talk to people. But you can tell that this is not what he wants to be doing. So maybe maybe that's part of it. Maybe there's some anxiety thinking about what it's going to be like in New York, where you're in the fishbowl. But I like what Zimmer said when we talk about where's Barr been and all this. He made the statement. It struck home for me in saying that teams game plan around this guy. Because he has probably so many different skill sets. He can rush, he can cover, he can tackle. So they got to figure out where he's at on the field and what they're going to do with him, because or what the Vikings are going to do with him. So I think that's important. If you've got teams that come in and look at and figure out how to take out a player, they're doing that, and that's freeing up someone else to excel. So I think he is really important to this defense, even though that we haven't been able to always see him making the flash plays like he did his rookie year. I'm happy with the fact that they got him. It was weird how it all went down. I don't know where it's going to go. I hope now that he's got this big contract, he doesn't become the disappearing bar that people have accused him of being. Who knows? These guys are human, so you never know what's going to happen. But the bottom line for me, I'm glad they got him. It's unfortunate, just like the Kirk Cousins contract, it probably cripples them a little bit because they don't have as much space this year with the cap. But
the amount of money that they've invested on this defense it's I mean, like you said, it is amazing how Brzezinski has been able to. Speaking of keeping multiple plates spinning, I'm going to pull this up real quick because I was searching. Our managing editor of Vikings territory, Sean Borman, posted on his Twitter recently, as in last night, the 2019 cap hits of the Vikings defense. So going across the defense, Griffin, $8.1 million, Linval, $10.7, Shamar Stephen, $2.3, Daniil Hunter, $13.5, Barr, $5.6.
Yeah.
I thought it was like $14 million. It's backloaded though, right?
Yes. They structured it so that they could fit him in. That was the biggest deal. They couldn't just throw money at his feet. Now, did Sean include how that all compares to the cap hit that the quarterback is taking?
Oh, there you go. That's a good segue. I'll finish this really quickly. Kendrick, 6.6. Ben Gideon, $800,000. Xavier, 13.3. Trey, 9.1. Harrison Smith, 10.7. Harris, 3.1. So yeah, that's a lot of money, and that is a very big point. Actually, if you go to Purple PTSD or our relatively new website, purpleterritoryradio.com, you'll see that a bunch of the fellas from both sites did a roundtable over the weekend that was posted yesterday, and the title of it was "The Implications of this Kirk Cousins Contract." And I posited a rationale to Kirby on one of the episodes that I don't think it was in one of my articles, and I don't know if I didn't explain it the right way, but basically what it was it was in my Stephon Diggs trade article when that news was getting bounced around because of what Diggs' brother had posted and whatever. And I said that
definitely a whatever.
Yeah, I don't know what his brother was trolling, but you would think that the team would not be too happy with that. But at the time I didn't. I'm like 100% sure it isn't going to happen. But at the same time, nothing this team does surprises me. Combining that with the thoughts on trading Xavier or Trey, which was a big topic at the time. I've always not been the biggest fan of last year's draft, and I basically said that you go after Hughes when there were 4 plug and play guards drafted after Hughes and before Brian O'Neill, all of which who actually performed really well. One of which made the all-rookie team, first team. And instead of taking one of those guys and then having depth or a player that could play at the line, you have Hughes, who is coming off an injury. We don't know when he'll be healthy, who has limited experience in a system that has proven to take 3 to 4 years for a corner to get up to speed, even a first-round guy like Trey Waynes or Xavier Rhodes. So, assuming that they were going to make a trade, but even without that, you look at the Hughes pick hurt the team in that they didn't take an offensive lineman, and they would have done that. They would have been in a better spot with the cap because they wouldn't have to sign a free agent, which is more expensive than a rookie deal. And now you're trading an established defender or even a wide receiver, let's say. So it's almost a double negative in that you didn't get a guard, and you're basically replacing an established defender with a rookie. when they could have just drafted a guard, kept those guys, and we wouldn't be as freaked out about the cap, or we wouldn't be talking about Cousins restructuring his deal a year into it, which he's not going to do.
Right.
And that's what bothered me about that. Granted, they haven't made the trade or any trades, so but do you get what I mean? Like, it just.
I don't know. I mean, yes, I do. I mean, it would be nice now, and I'm not going to accuse you of back or hindsight, because you were probably saying this ahead of time, and you said it when they drafted Hughes, but Hughes jumped in right out of the gate and started playing it for Zimmer. So there's obviously some talent there. He said all during camp he's picked up his system quicker than anybody's ever had, and so maybe the guy is ultimately going to be your shutdown corner of the future, and they weren't getting what they wanted out of their slot corner in Mackenzie Alexander, and granted, I think he got the signal that was sent, and he stepped up his game, and he had his best season under Zimmer. And so I don't know that was foreseen. As Zimmer probably says in every goddamn meeting they're in, the corners, corners and defensive linemen, biggest deal. Blah 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 blah. They're the most important, and obviously their actions have demonstrated that. Do I wish now they had picked up a guard? Absolutely. And maybe, if they pick up a guard early, they don't get O'Neal, and Mike Remmers is your right tackle last year and then this year. So, I mean, is that good? Who knows?
It's better, not than necessarily than O'Neal, but when he was playing a right tackle, the line was markedly better. But they had Berger too, who was great.
And Easton. They had Easton and Berger at guards there, and they didn't have them last year. That was a huge blow in itself. And they had a rookie at right tackle. So,
who I hear is a bust.
Not in my estimation, but Anyway, if they don't do something about it this year, like I said in my story, they should be drafting guards early and often in this draft. I would like to see him get. I would like to see him get 2 linemen in their first 3 picks somehow. And
me too.
I don't know if that'll happen, but
2 linemen and a running back.
Yeah, I'm not so worried about a running back. I think you can pick up somebody later that can fill in. I mean, yeah, we can talk about Amir Abdullah replacing Latavius Murray. I'm not excited about that either. But I'm not so worried about running back that early. I'm sure they'll throw in. You're not going to get Zimmer would start twitching in the war room if they don't get a defender in the first 3 picks. So.
Here's my why I'm worried about the running back position, or why I think they should spend a high value pick on that position. I also think that trading down from 18 and picking up a guard in the 20s might help. They have 8 picks, adding something in the 4th round would be great. I mean, they have displayed that they can develop late round or undrafted talent on this defense. I think it's a system defense that lifts everyone to a higher level. And there's a lot of trust there, so that they trust the guy next to them to do things. So if it's a rookie that isn't doing things, it might start to break things down a little bit. But Holton Hill and Eric Wilson, who wasn't a rookie, but wasn't a star or anything, they showed that they can handle that. And Everson Griffin being out too. The running back situation, I look at it this way, and we'll get into the onside kick rule too, but my philosophy is the same on both things. You look at the onside kick thing, I know everyone thinks it's great, and they've been watching the AAF and they like some of those rules, but I always say that if there's a rule change, I always look at the worst possible outcome, because usually that ends up applying to the Vikings at a critical moment. So anything that can, I can totally see the Packers or a playoff game get forward on 4th and 15 for the onside kick or whatever, and getting it and us all being upset about it. I look at the running back position the same way, but it's less based on me and this idea of a curse, and more based on just what we've seen out of Dalvin Cook. And he hasn't put together a long stretch of games played injury wise. He's had 2 non-contact injuries, which concerns me. probably more than contact injuries do. And I do like Amir Abdullah probably more than the next guy for reasons I think you'll know. Big Ten cough. But he also, I think, he's shown flashes of brilliance, to be honest, in the pros. He was a Heisman candidate, at Nebraska. And the problem is that he's not built to be even a 15 carry a game guy in the NFL. He's too small. And that's what hurt him in Detroit. There's a game where the Vikings played the Lions where they could not. Abdullah was so shifty that they could not get him down. And I could see him doing that, but his injuries hurt him too. So I have a feeling the reason Latavius Murray was so valuable and really put more value in than they paid him was that he ended up being the starting running back for more than 50% of the time that he was here. Yep. And Abdullah can't do that. Dalvin Cook hasn't proven that he can do that, and I'm hoping that it's just been a bad start for him. But I think they need someone who is reliable and who's bigger and has some talent that will not necessarily have like a Toby Gerhardt situation where you just have like a...
So you want him to draft another starting running back is what you're telling me?
No, I would rather just not wait until like the 7th or 8th round.
I'm not saying that. The first 3 rounds is too soon. I always tend to default towards what I think they're going to do as opposed to what I think they should do because I believe they know more about it than I do. And I think they will grab a defender of some sort along the defensive line in there. They've got Shamar Stephen. They probably need to sign Tom Johnson to another year contract and then draft a rookie to train in on the line while you know.
They have what's his name from Iowa, Jaleel Johnson.
Yes, they do, and hasn't done a lot yet. He's not bad. I shouldn't say that. I'm not going to criticize him. I just think they will. They load up on those positions, and since they lost Sheldon Richardson, they're going to.
Oh, I agree with you. I think they will too. I think it's impossible to.
And you remember
for them.
I'm sorry, but the de-emphasis of the running back position. You don't.
Yeah.
I think there's plenty of in college. There's plenty of guys that can fill the void, and they can become what they want is a decent running back who, if called on, can come and step in and be great. How many teams have you seen in if you look from a fantasy football perspective where that happens? Some guy that you don't even know has to play because of injuries above him, and Pittsburgh Steelers, the Denver Broncos.
That's usually what wins fantasy football leagues is
exactly.
If you pick up this flyer that ends up being the guy for that season. Yeah, I was thinking 3rd or 4th round.
I'm okay with 4th or 5th round, I guess, but it doesn't matter. I think we know where we stand. I am just not like you. I'm not overly excited about. I guess I'm less excited about Amir Abdullah than you are. Injuries has a tendency a little bit to fumble. I'm not.
I was going to add that, and that's my. I wrote out a very professional response to that guy on Bleacher Report, and then I said I should not do this. But it basically was, you can't overvalue really what Marcus Sherrills did. You never worried about him fumbling. I think he had 1 fumble his entire career. He was always in the top 1, 2, 3 spot for average yards per return.
Always made the first guy miss.
Yeah, he always usually turned nothing into something, and he was really good about when he chose the fair catch and that sort of thing. And
that's got to be a money decision, don't you think, Joe?
Oh yeah, I figured, was it last year or the year before, where he didn't hold out, but he wanted more money. And everyone thought he was gone, and he was going to go to the Redskins, I think. I always thought that pay bump was going to eventually be the end of his time here. And so, it's a money thing. They got to love what he's done. His story is so awesome as a walk-on at the U and coming in here. And he's just, God, he was just so reliable. And he doesn't have that relationship either with with the new special teams coordinator.
That's a good point.
That that he did with Prefer. But that brings up a question I have.
And the other thing is, too, I just wanted to say before you go, is he also can't – he's okay, but he can't really be counted on to fill in at cornerback because he was too small. And he's gotten older and probably lost a step back there. But so you probably want someone like Hughes returning kicks for you who's going to start and also can be counted on to play, you know.
Yeah. That was, Abdullah can do that, and he did do that last year. But he has also fumbled, like you said, and I just don't want to add that stress to my life. I think you and I both use the same comparison in that in your article, which is everyone should check out. It's on Purple PTSD right now. I will say really quickly again. I keep plugging that article. I said this internally, and I mean it. And I want to say it on the show because I want people to understand some things about our site and about you as an author. I would put up the article that you wrote yesterday about free agency against anything in the Star Tribune for sure.
Wow.
It's on that. It reminds me of it in how it's written, more so a Royce or Suhan level thing than something that's just more like, here's the facts, whatever, like jottings or something like that. People really need to check that out and follow you on Twitter at Joe Oberle, because your stuff is always very, very good, even if I don't agree with it, but usually I begrudgingly do. So check that out. Follow Joe on Twitter.
Well, thank you, Joe. That's nice of you to say. I don't know if it reaches that, but I'm going to take your word for it. I'm going to let you say that and feel good about it. It's an opinion piece I felt kind of strongly about, and I had plenty of time out on the Pacific and Atlantic Oceans on a cruise boat to think, what the heck are the Vikings up to? And so you formulate these things, you come back and put it down. It kind of was one of those that flowed, and it was fun, and I appreciate your comments. Thank you.
But I don't want you to get too big of a head just because I don't like Suhan in general. So the bar's pretty low. But you came to the same conclusion that I did, or made the same comparison rather, that the Saints are the new Seahawks in that they're loading up on Vikings left and right. And I wonder... I have so many questions about this. Just about the Saints, do you think that's something that they're doing knowingly, or it's just how the chips ended up kind of falling?
I don't think that's a good question. That's interesting because we know why the Seahawks did it. They for a while at least
poison pill.
Yeah, Nate Burleson. That was just it was specifically done to get back at the Vikings for the poison pill on Steve Hutchinson. So that was clear. That stuff might have lingered. These old grudges continue, and the Saints certainly have a grudge, a bone to pick with us, perhaps because of the Minneapolis Miracle. Even though they stole the Vikings Super Bowl opportunity back in 2009, so it could go the other way. I don't think so. I think because Zimmer and Peyton are friends. The coach, Sean Payton, are friends. I think they coached together one year in Dallas, I believe, and they have a really good competitive relationship. We heard about it when they played last year, and maybe there is. Maybe they know that taking Nick Easton from the Vikings is going to cripple them where they live.
Yeah,
that's very possible. I mean, it's a great signing for them. They maybe needed to bolster their offensive line, and here's a way to hurt the Vikings at the same time. So if they don't think about that, then they're probably not doing their job right. Are they specifically just rating the Vikings players just to piss them off or weaken them or whatever? Yeah. I don't know that it's a general plan, but I do feel that it crossed their mind when it came to the Nick Easton. As far as Latavius Murray, that one I still don't understand from Latavius's part.
I was going to ask you that. Wasn't it all about him starting?
Yes, and I don't think he's going to start down there. I think he's going to split time with Kamara. There's no two ways about it. And Kamara he's the key back down there. So it's kind of the same role if you add and more money. Maybe he knew that
I think
that
it's
the Vikings weren't going to be able to
lesser
put money
role
on it.
Yeah, you know what I mean.
Absolutely,
I think,
it certainly has been.
He would have got well. I know Zimmer said that they throw him in every third series, so maybe he wouldn't get as much time as I'm assuming. But Kamara is obviously one of the young stars of the NFL. So
right.
I think that I like how you put it. Just in regards to the Saints thing, in that you have good teams. It's like when the team wins the Super Bowl, they lose a lot of players to free agency because those players are cashing in on that success. Now the Vikings didn't reach that level, but the Saints saw firsthand some of these guys, and I think they're just from that perspective, it's the same reason that the Rams are losing a ton of free agents. And then you look at it from the player perspective, and obviously they want to join a team that they think is going to make a run for it. And sometimes that supersedes money. So I think it lined up perfectly in that they said, the Vikings are a good team. We saw these players firsthand. We can weaken them, not out of spite, but because we don't necessarily want to face them again. And from a player perspective, they're saying, well, let's join the Saints because they are going to make a huge run for the Super Bowl this next year. And they would have if they weren't, quote-unquote, ripped off in the playoffs. So, yeah, I look at it that way. But, the Latavius Murray thing really confused me. And a lot of people thought we might end up switching running backs and that Mark Ingram would end up here. That didn't end up happening, obviously. But anyway.
Joe, you got this on the agenda, and it kind of piques my interest too. I always wonder, how do the Saints, a team that is that good, it has been that good for a long time, and certainly has, one of the best quarterbacks in the league, and they've got a lot of, really good players on their team. How do they get all the cap room to fit in guys like Easton and Murray? And I mean, Murray's going to be a backup for him.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think Sherrell's is any big deal, but the other two is probably. To be honest, I haven't looked at what else they've done, but it's like God dang, what was that mismanagement on the Vikings' part that all of a sudden this all comes to a head, or
and they got to be paying Breeze on a similar level to Cousins.
Absolutely, or certainly. I mean, I think Breeze had the biggest contract or the biggest contract in the league for a very short time when he signed. I believe, but maybe you can check me on that.
Yeah,
so it's just amazing. The Vikings are so crippled this year.
It looks like
other teams are not.
Breeze is $25 million, but $27 million it says $27 million with guarantees. So yeah, that's pretty darn close. I don't know. I know that their wide receivers don't cost as much. They have a couple guys on a rookie deal. Michael
they've
Thomas
been kind of plugging. Yeah, that's a good point. They've been kind of plug and play around him.
Yeah,
since he came aboard.
Ted Ginn isn't very expensive.
Right.
It's like a Brady situation. You put somebody, like you said, plug someone in and it works. They have invested a lot more money in the offensive line, clearly bringing Easton in, and that seems to be a common thread amongst these teams. But yeah, I wanted to. On a positive note, actually, before we get in, well, we can do that because these are all signings. We talked about Amir Abdullah. I want to talk about Klein. That was the move that did help me calm down a little bit, or a lot of it, because I did like what I was reading about him, namely in his ability to stay healthy. He's got, I believe, a 47-game starting streak, and you mentioned in the article he's missed 5 games in his career. That's huge.
No, since he's been a starter, which is 2015.
Yep. So
he's been durable. The point is he's durable. Yeah.
Yeah. Which, like I just said this on the phone yesterday, and I don't necessarily like repeating jokes, but that means the clock is ticking for him to tear his Achilles.
Absolutely.
In some non-contact situation. But he, talked in the Strib about coming here, and I think that what excited me most was that he said that outside of Cousins, he knows the offense probably better than anyone on the team, and that he's not necessarily a verbal guy, but he leads when people come to him, but that he thought that because he played in a system under the new Packers head coach LaFleur during his time in Tennessee that was similar to what Gary Kubiak and company was running, that he really understood, the verbiage and the changes. So he's going to be a big leader, and he's going to acclimate really quickly, I think. And just one other positive, obviously he won a Super Bowl his second year in the league, and having a guy with that experience is important.
Well, if that's the case, that they can put him in, he can start, and he can, and he's an improvement over the guard play the Vikings had last year. That's a huge deal. That's a huge deal, and it mitigates some of my angst that I was experiencing, my Joe Johnson-like angst that I had when I was away. And that's good, because then they can go, if they've actually filled a hole, a need, and took a step forward, yay! Put him in on the right guard. Let him be better than Mike Remmers. Then I'm happy. I'm happier. Then they don't have to sell out the entire draft to find two guards to start. They can draft a potential starter in the first round, and then wait a little bit and find a great backup, with someone with some position flexibility that can. And that's the thing about Klein. He can play both guards. He has played both guards for Tennessee, so that's a good thing. But then they can find and they have some depth there. Then I'm happy. And then you get a tackle later, because Reef's not going to be around forever, and we're hoping that Brian O'Neill is on the rise. And he's going to be even better this year after a year at the position. So. I saw one little bit I paid attention when I was gone is I think you had talked about somewhere, maybe it was on Slack, about them moving Elfline to a guard.
I was just gonna ask you that, and I just looked it up because I wanted to make sure that I wasn't that I hadn't missed something.
Is that for real?
Well, that is something that I thought of because they're still trying to re-sign Brett Jones, who can play.
Right.
And so here's the headline that'll explain what I'm talking about. Vikings visit with center Tyler Shatley, but are still looking at signing Jones. So if they're looking for a center solely, Jones could go either way, but if they're specifically looking at the center position, when they have limited money, I know they need depth, but why would they focus on that when they need more depth at the guard position? So I'm thinking that because he played and was one of the best guards in the country at Ohio State, it might make more sense to put him at left guard.
I'll let you have the first one. Now that's two. Now I have to say,
it's actually been three.
You did. That's right, Abdul. You did call yourself a prophet when you were talking about this prospect. So we'll wait to see for it to come true before we go that far. Okay, Mr.
Well, yeah, it's just a theory I have, and I actually should write it into an article. But yeah, it's good to have that flexibility. Jones fits the bill as a flexible, multiple position guy.
I agree, but with a caveat, we hardly saw the guy last year, and what we saw of him, we didn't like, and so now
Jones.
Yeah, so how desperate are they at the line just to get some bodies in there?
Do you want to know how desperate I am? I didn't tell you this on the phone. I brought it up, but I did it when I interrupted you, and so. I didn't end up telling you. I wrote an article, and full disclosure, the point of it was to highlight how desperate I was, and to prove that point, the article's still saved on the site. I never posted it. I posted the scene from Avengers, the first Avengers movie, where Nick Fury, Samuel L. Jackson, had Loki inside the helicarrier, the cage for the Hulk. And Loki says to Nick Fury, "How desperate are you to bring such tortured, crazy creatures together?" And he goes, "You've made me pretty damn desperate." And the point of the article was, the Vikings. This is why I didn't post it. I'm ashamed to even bring this up. The Vikings could get Matt Khalil for dirt cheap and convert him to left guard.
I saw that. I thought you were kidding, weren't you?
Well, I wasn't being 100% no. The point was that's how desperate I am. Do I want them to do it? No. Are they going to do it? No. But the thought popped up in my head, and I couldn't let go of how my brain was that desperate, basically.
Well, I'm sorry to tell you that dream is gone. Khalil signs, I think, in Texas, I believe. He withdrew.
Well, then I'm done. But I was I can't post this because people will miss the point,
I tell you, I do not, and in fact, I mentioned this in my piece. It's like I want him to draft him early and often, and boy, how exciting will that draft be? My goodness me, drafting offensive line first, 2 out of the first 3 picks, but
me in high school would hate it. Me now would love it.
Yes, it would be a sign of if they're good players to just really be excited for the season because they've kind of maintained the defense. I think they're going to be fine. Got a couple, they need some depth in a couple spots, and if they can get Cousins protected, it's just the key and open some holes in that line. Cooks, I mean, they're going to be right back in contention. But as I told you, as you texted, I don't see another 8-7-1 season, but I also don't see an 11-5 season either.
Yeah,
yet. So,
right now, yeah. I don't disagree with that. I would love nothing more though than I do think that, and we don't really need to get into this. We've talked about this a lot, but I hear so much anti-Cousins rhetoric, and it feels like. Going back to telling that writer why I am not participating in the comments, a big part of that was that a nightmare scenario that I wrote on the live chat, I think the week before the Bears game, which was if we blow that game or come out and have like 5 3-and-outs like we did a couple weeks ago, it's going to be a worst case scenario because the fan base is going to split into camps of who to blame, and then they're going to argue, basically cannibalize the fan base by everyone having their reasons and then arguing and hating each other because no one agrees on the source. And because of that, you do hear a lot of Cousins hate, and I think people are forgetting how the season started and the chemistry he had with Thielen and Thielen breaking those records. And he was making, standing tough in the pocket and making these throws. And it sounds like I lost Joe, which is all right. Or are you back?
I am back now. I don't know what happened.
Either do I, but either way, you're not missing out on much. No, just that people think that he just was terrible the entire time when that isn't the case. And I think that he, obviously prepares well and really does want to come out and kind of prove all these.
There's no question about that.
So
there's no question about that. I've heard some criticism of him as not working hard enough. I think it's goofy. You listen to the players and the coaches; they all say how he over prepares, if anything. And I came into this looking towards the second year. You and I have discussed this many times. And,
yep.
And unfortunately, I only had that mode of optimism given the fact that the Vikings were going to improve the offensive line. If they don't give him the opportunity to be the best player he can be, give him the time that he needs to do what he needs to do, and get the time, get a line that block, open some holes for a running game that takes the pressure off him and allows him to be even a better quarterback. If they don't do that, then we're going to be right back here at the end of next season saying the same things with even more vigor and criticizing him because the quarterback's the lightning rod. It gets all the blame for sure and most of the credit. And if they it'll be the biggest travesty of this era if they sign him to this contract, make the biggest free agent purchase that they've ever made on this team, and then not put the team around him to make it, work. it's a travesty.
It really is, and yes, I completely agree with you. And what is going to drive me completely crazy? All right, just really quickly, when the biggest actual impassioned debate where I raised my voice and everything was when Luke and I talked about Cousins last year on the Purple Journal podcast. And I was operating under the same assumption that they would, they would draft some guards, they would replace Berger, so on and so forth. And what's going to drive me crazy is if, let's say in worst case scenario, they don't fix the line and it all goes to hell and he's gone after 3 years. Everyone is going to think back about, well, yeah, that Cousins thing was a disaster, he sucked. And even if they admit that they didn't have a good offensive line, they'll say, well, they couldn't afford one because Cousins took all the money. And that isn't necessarily the case. It's just it has to be handled the right way. And so far, the results are mixed.
Yeah, it's just that's where you can lay some blame on Zimmer if they don't get this done with the offensive line, because with all due respect to him, and me, I really like him as a coach, and I think he's the guy that the Vikings need. But if his focus and is so intent on building that defense, and a great defense is going to make you competitive year to year. It's going to keep you in games. It's going to make you in the conversation. So I applaud that completely. And he's made this team relevant again from when he took over. So there's no two ways about that. But if it keeps being the emphasis at the expense of an offense, and you're thinking you can just throw in an $84 million quarterback and expect it to roll, then he deserves the criticism he would get, I would think.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've seen how far this defense can take the team. I think they've reached their ceiling, like you said. A couple minutes ago, do you think the defense will be okay? They re-signed Barr and they have Griffin still, and they could fill a couple positions, but the defense will be about the same. They need to understand that the defense isn't going to win them a Super Bowl single-handedly, and everybody knows Cousins is not great under pressure. And I said a lot of this on the Smoke Break show during the season. He isn't Tom Brady, but he can be a very elite system guy. But that system, assumes some form of protection and some run game. You can't just put it all on his shoulders like you might, I want to say like a Drew Brees, but he has, help. So, nobody can do it by themselves. With that,
he's also got a new offensive coordinator and system to get used to too. So it's going to take a little time. It's unfortunate, but that's the way it is.
Yeah, that can't. That's a big deal. And you wonder how Kubiak and Stefanski are going to get along. A new system. Last year the system was so complicated that Zimmer called Cousins after a bad game and said, "Is this too much for you? Should we kind of ease it up or cut out some plays?" He said no, but maybe they need to simplify things. They have the talent, they just need the protection and to not overthink things, I think. But yeah, we're up against it, so it's great to have you back. I want people to keep an eye out on the sites for a couple things. We're going to be hosting another Day 2 draft party this season. We did one last year. It was awesome. We're looking for a venue. I have a general idea on what we're going to do that's going to be really, really cool if everything falls into place. And so I'll announce that when it's confirmed, but keep an eye out for the Day 2 draft party. That's a Friday night, I believe the 26th. Beyond that, just keep an eye out on the sites for Grey Duck Vodka. They just opened up in Iowa. If you're in Iowa listening, which a lot of you actually are, go to greyduckspirits.com, put in your zip code, and it'll find a store near you. They're in over 600 stores right now. across Minnesota, North Dakota, South Dakota. If you're in Minnesota, even way up towards Canada, they're everywhere. It's amazing. So yeah, go to greyduckspirits.com, follow Grey Duck on Twitter and Facebook, and keep on coming to the sites. I appreciate all the support that we get from you guys, and I am super, super excited for what's coming up, at least from a site perspective. The team I'm actually losing sleep over. But this has been Morning Joes. We'll be in touch next week. Skol.